the country, the world watching for this verdict, this moment, which again is just minutes away from it being read from the 6 women jurors that have decided the fate of the man you're looking at the screen. He is right now just kind of staring there, and again, you have to imagine just in his thoughts as to what is about to happen for him. Bill, you've been here with the defendant who faces life in prison for a murder charge. You've told them that heart-to-heart talk the moments before the verdict is you need to get your affairs in order, potentially tell your family goodbye, because if in fact the guilty verdict comes, he'll be handcuffed immediately, fingerprinted, and then taken away to jail.
It's a very hard conversation that you have with your client and the family, and they place great trust in you, and they believe that you can adjudicate their cause and that you can bring home the bacon, if you will. Very emotional and difficult talk that you have when you believe the jury's going to come back with a guilty verdict. Certainly Mr. O'Meara would have had to have that talk with George, and you know what? You can look at his face and it reflects the fact that this conversation more than likely occurred. And yes, you're right, if he is convicted in the jury of manslaughter and the jury finds that there was the firearm enhancement, he would be looking at 30 years in jail. That's almost a lifetime for a man George's age. If he's convicted of second-degree murder, we absolutely know that the sentence could be up to life in prison, and we have to believe it would be the stiffer sentence depending on what he's convicted of.
Okay, we've got you covered here. We have crews both outside the courthouse and fanned out across Central Florida. Also, Channel 9's Kathy Belich is inside the courtroom as well to provide in terms of the play-by-play of what the jurors look like as they come back. We're following her on Twitter as well, and again on our website, WFTV.com, but the camera zooming in to George Zimmerman. And what you will see as this verdict is read, this came in a release from the Seminole County Criminal Justice Center, is that the camera will be affixed to George Zimmerman while the verdict is read. All the other camera angles will not be seen, but they will be released to us one by one just as soon as possible to turn those around. We'll bring those to you. And then, depending on the verdict, there is a room downstairs that is for the media. And each member of the defense and of the prosecution, depending on how the case goes, have been invited to come down and talk with the media.
Yeah, I'm understanding that, by the way, I think that the jurors would be given an option if they wanted to talk. I doubt that they will. That's what we saw in Casey Anthony's. The jurors wanted to go home, and certainly these jurors will want to go home. And we have the added issue, if you will, that they do not know what the reaction is going to be to their verdict. Obviously, there are strong feelings. It's very divided as to guilt or innocence in this case, so you can bet they'll want to go home. They'll want to keep their names anonymous as long as possible, and this court is certainly going to accommodate them in that respect.
Again, there you see the family. There is Shelley Zimmerman. You can see just how sad she is, the look on her face. She is wearing the blue top there, and the mother, Gladys Zimmerman, in the middle of your screen. And again, if we take this video full, we may have a better vantage point in terms of the whole scope of it. Let's go now to courtroom 5D. Everyone is standing. Here is Judge Deborah Nelson.
Seated. We're back on the record. I understand that we have a verdict. Are we ready for the jury to come in?
We are, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let's go ahead and bring him in. And I will remind everybody in the courtroom that there's to be no outbursts upon the reading of the verdict or afterwards. Please be seated. Members of the jury, have you reached a verdict? If you'll please fold the verdict form and hand it to Deputy Jarvis. Thank you. Okay, if you'll please publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit in and for Seminole County, Florida, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty. So say we all four-person.
Does either side want to poll the jury?
We would, Your Honor.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. As your juror number is being called, please answer whether this is your verdict.
Juror B 29, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror B 76, is this your verdict? Yes. Juror B 37, is this your verdict? Yes.
Ladies, thank you very much. You will be taken back to the jury room to be discharged.
George Zimmerman not guilty of murder. You just heard it right at 10 o'clock tonight. He is now a free man. They will cut the GPS ankle monitor off his, again, ankle probably right now, Bill, and he can come out of the Seminole County Criminal Justice Center a free man. There is the biggest smile we have seen. We also saw some reaction outside the court. Bill, after 36 years of experience as a criminal defense attorney and a prosecutor, as we look live at Shelley Zimmerman and we saw their reaction, I'd like to have your reaction as to what you just heard.
Well, absolutely. I have said all along that Florida's self-defense jury instruction favors the defense. The evidence favored a not guilty verdict in this case. Look, the state had the emotional, they even may have had the moral argument in this instance. However, the law and the facts favored the defendant. The jury clearly was not swayed by emotions and went to the jury instructions, followed them to the letter of the law, and returned this not guilty verdict.
There are, again, a large number of people. We have witnessed it here in Central Florida, across the world, across the community, in terms of people's emotions are raw regarding this. We're going to talk more with Bill Schaefer, but let's go to our news anchors again, Channel 9's Bob Opsahl and Marty Salt, with more insight.
All right, thank you very much, Greg and Bill. Terrific job out there, by the way. And I think one of the things that struck us here in the studio was the fact that George Zimmerman didn't smile and show any teeth for minutes after the verdict was read, when he finally sat down and was able to relax for a moment.
That's right. It was the first smile that we had seen on his face during this entire trial. 9:59 was when the not guilty verdict came down tonight. It took the jury just about 13 hours to come to that conclusion. We have live coverage, and we're going to go first to George Estevez. I believe he is ready, and he is standing outside the Seminole County Courthouse with some supporters there, as well as the media. And George, can you hear us? What can you tell us?
There was an eerie calm at this moment when they were processing what was actually going on. They were listening. You could almost hear conceivably the most quiet moment of the entire day around that time, 9:59, then 10 o'clock, and then by 10 o'clock and 30 seconds, they were looking at their phones, they were looking around, and they realized what the verdict was. So right behind me, you're seeing people's backsides because they're facing toward the big open field, and many people have already left this area. We're right in front of the courthouse. We're about 100 feet from where that verdict was read. You have families here. You have people that have been here for hours, and they're still here. I can tell you the deputies, the law enforcement, they're still standing around. There has been nothing but outcry from many of the people here because the supporters that are left, a majority of them are supporters for Trayvon Martin, supporters for the Martin family. So they're the ones that are being vocal tonight because they're the ones that are mostly here, and they're the ones that are in that crowd. The signs are still up. People are still chanting for justice. Some people have left this crowd cursing the system, cursing the country, angry, but at the same time with a sense of, all right, we fight again. We go somewhere and we figure out what we're doing. Right now what they're cheering is the whole system is crooked, I believe is what they're saying. So right now the anger that we're feeling out here is really toward the system, which is, I guess, the purpose of having a system, whether it's flawed or not. It gives people something to go ahead and look toward and feel whether they've been wronged or not. So again, everything is calm out here. They're continuing to voice their concerns, and we're live out here right in front of the courthouse. We'll stay out here to monitor this situation and let you know exactly what's going on. Bob, Marty?
All right, thank you, George. And I'm hoping at some point we're able to hear from at least one of the jurors who might be able to give us a little insight into what their deliberations were, the things they talked about and the things they went through, and maybe what the juror might be able to say will help those people feel a little better about the verdict.
There was so much speculation during all these deliberations of what they could be thinking, who could be thinking what. They were never identified. They're not going to be identified, perhaps, for a long time, if ever.
All right, and right now we do have been able to track down one of our reporters. Channel 9's Carla Ray is out there in the crowd outside the Seminole County Courthouse. And Carla, what sort of reaction have you been able to pick up so far?
I mean, it's the reaction you would expect for a not guilty verdict. These people out here have been chanting all day they want justice for Trayvon, and just now they have been chanting the whole system's guilty. There are people yelling profanities out here, people very upset saying this was an all-white or mostly white jury and shouldn't have been doing this in the first place. But as we know, this is how the justice system works. There's always going to be one side that doesn't like what happens, and the other side is going to go home happy. And tonight, that's George Zimmerman. So this crowd out here, not very happy, as you can imagine. They're calling for nationwide rallies and protests. We can show you this crowd that we've been showing you all day. It's still just as thick as it was here earlier tonight when we were live here at 6 o'clock. And even though the hours have passed, their passions have not. They are still very engaged in all of this. There are even children out here who are wide awake with their parents and grandparents chanting. You can hear them start to chant right now. They're saying, you can hear them. The system has failed is what they're saying right now. They do not have faith in the system. They believe that the jurors made the wrong choice. Again, these people, some of them have been here just as long as we have, and we expect them to continue to stay out here, guys.
We can certainly understand their feelings of anger and upsettedness, but thank goodness, as you've mentioned, no one's advocating violence, and they certainly haven't been violent to this point.
I understand right now the state attorney of Jacksonville, Angela Corey, who was the one who filed charges against Trayvon Martin, against George Zimmerman, is speaking now.
For Trayvon Martin and due process for George Zimmerman, that we would get all of the facts and details of this very difficult case before a jury, and that we chose to do it that way because we felt that everyone had a right to know everything about this case. Again, we want to thank all of you. We want to thank all of the people who have sent prayers our way. We want to thank, again, the people of Seminole County for allowing us to come in here and try this case. God bless you, and we do ask for peace and for privacy to the extent that Trayvon Martin's family wants that privacy. Thank you very much.
And you've been listening to the prosecutor in this case, the special prosecutor appointed by the governor, State Attorney Angela Corey from Jacksonville, and her entire prosecution team. Certainly no hard feelings because of the not guilty verdict tonight. In fact, they said they respect what the jury was able to do.
That's right. Certainly disappointed, but respect the jury's verdict. They said that over and over again. We're going to Mark O'Mara right now, who's George Zimmerman's defense attorney. He is speaking. Let's listen in.
Reading it to you. So Don and I just want to take a minute just to acknowledge not only the court system and, of course, what Judge Nelson did in making sure that this trial got moved forward and got to a good conclusion, but obviously we are ecstatic with the results. George Zimmerman was never guilty of anything except protecting himself in self-defense.
Sometimes I can be a little more blunt. I think the prosecution of George Zimmerman was disgraceful. I am gratified by the jury's verdict, as happy as I am for George Zimmerman. I'm thrilled that this jury kept this tragedy from becoming a travesty.
I don't think anyone would argue with me in this room that they had evidence of second-degree murder. This in-your-heart kind of stuff, that's not what we're supposed to do, and that's not what they're supposed to do. So those two systems failed them.
You have been watching WFTV Channel 9 Eyewitness News. We are covering the George Zimmerman verdict, which came down at 9:59 tonight, of not guilty. You have been listening to the defense team make remarks for about 30 minutes. No love lost, obviously, between the defense team and the state. In fact, Don West used the word, he thought the prosecution was disgraceful of George Zimmerman.
And he was probably the most emotional of all of the folks we've heard from since the not guilty verdict. He seemed to have a real personal stake in all of this. He was a true believer in George Zimmerman's innocence. And he even used the phrase that he was glad that this tragedy, the loss of the life of Trayvon Martin, wasn't turned into a travesty by convicting George Zimmerman.
That's right. And Mark O'Mara, he applauded the efforts of the Seminole County Sheriff's Department and the Sanford Police Department of their investigation. Sanford had been criticized for their handling of the case from the beginning. Mark O'Mara and the State Attorney's Office both actually applauded the law enforcement.
And as Mark O'Mara also said, that George Zimmerman will now remain pretty much in hiding to keep himself safe. And during that entire time when you were listening to opposing sides in the George Zimmerman murder trial, since the not guilty verdict, we've been showing you on the other side of the screen the demonstrators, etc., outside the Seminole County Courthouse tonight. And Channel 9's George Estevez has been out there with them. And George, I understand the crowd has been thinning a little bit.
Yes, they have been thinning a little bit since that verdict was read at 9:59. We're right outside of the Justice Center, and there are people behind me that, while the crowd has thinned out, they have been waiting. We're not sure what they're waiting for, and I asked them, what are you waiting for? And they said, we've been waiting for months. What's another few minutes? A lot of people are asking me here that are left with their children still on this Saturday night, where is George Zimmerman? Is he coming out? This family right here, a little girl, a little boy, he spoke to me earlier today, and he told me in his own words that he feels George Zimmerman should get exactly what Trayvon Martin got. So pretty much a similar opinion out here, some angrier than others, but very peaceful. A lot of deputies out here, a lot of law enforcement, so everything out here is very much under control. We're live outside the Seminole County Justice Center. George Estevez, Channel 9 Eyewitness News.
And I think it's safe to say that the words of that little 10-year-old boy are not the words from his own heart. They're the words he's heard some of the adults out there saying tonight.
We've also been asked about Trayvon Martin's parents. They were not in the courtroom for the verdict tonight. In fact, they have not been spotted around the courthouse all day. We have unconfirmed information that they flew out of town. And their attorney, Benjamin Crump, is speaking right now. We're going to go to him live for his remarks.
Good evening. My name is Daryl Parks. I'm the law firm of Parks and Crump in Tallahassee, and we represent the Trayvon Martin family. We are very, very, very saddened, but we accept the jury's verdict in this case.
Tracy and Sabrina are thankful for all those prayers over the past 17 months since the death of their son. This is a very trying time for their family, and we ask that you respect their privacy.
What I say is what I told Sabrina and Tracy. I sent them a text and I told them, I said, I listened to the sheriff's press conference yesterday, and he noted all these changes that had been made in the wake of the shooting of Trayvon Martin. And there is a victory in that.
You've been listening to the Martin family attorneys talk about their feelings and what the Martin family's been going through. Obviously, we know now that they were not in court for the verdict tonight and decided not to attend any of the trial today, not to be in the courthouse. They are in some undisclosed location and plan to go to their church tomorrow. However, we have heard from Tracy Martin, Trayvon Martin's father. He put out a couple of tweets today, and we want to read those to you now so that you get a sense of how he is feeling about all this. He says, God blessed me and Sabrina with Trey, and even in his death, I know my baby is proud of the fight we, along with all of you, put up for him. God bless. And here's the other tweet he sent. Even though I am brokenhearted, my faith is unshattered. I will always love my baby Trey.
Those are the tweets from Tracy Martin tonight, and it was noted earlier, of course, that we haven't seen them all day long, but they have been there every day for all of this trial. We want to go now to Greg Warmoth and our legal analyst, Bill Schaefer, who've been there every step of the way from the beginning. Bill, you've provided invaluable analysis, just letting us know day in and day out what's going on in the courtroom for those of us who do not have legal minds. Do you think, did the state lose this case, or was the case thin to begin with?
This case was lost the minute that the state put on all of the hearsay, self-serving statements. Marty, if they had not put those statements in, it would have forced Zimmerman to take the stand. They could have then married him, tattooed him with the statements that he made, the inconsistencies, and what they said was lies. It was at that point when I turned to Greg and we observed this case will not be won, and as early as that, I said, I think I'm seeing a not guilty verdict.
We want to go back out on the streets now. Channel 9's Mert Price is in the historic Goldsboro neighborhood of the Sanford area, and he joins us now with more reaction from that site.
Well, we were out here when the verdict came down, and people were absolutely devastated. Right now, we're here at the Goldsboro Welcome Center. Now, joining me is Ms. Frances Oliver. You actually run the Welcome Center here.
Yes.
You were here. We talked to you earlier. What went through your mind when that verdict came down?
When the verdict came down, my heart just failed. And I couldn't stop the tears. I couldn't stop. I just felt like something was choking me at the time. But that's one thing about sadness, and it only lasts for the night. Joy comes in the morning.
Okay, she is among others out here who were absolutely devastated when the verdict came down. We're going to stay out here. We're going to continue to follow this, and we'll have more. Back to you guys.
All right. Thank you, Mert. And we do have reporters spread out. Let's go back to George Estevez now, who's outside the Seminole County Courthouse, has been all night. And George, you have talked with Sanford Police Chief Cecil Smith, who just arrived in Sanford, actually as the new police chief just a couple of months ago.
Yeah, that is right. And he's been on the job just for a couple of months, and already he's gotten to work on conceivably the most significant case situation that happened here in Sanford. And he's standing right here next to me in front of the courthouse. Thank you so much for coming out here. Why are you out here today? What's your message for the people of Sanford?
Well, it's been the same thing. Is that we're talking about this trial. The trial has essentially run its course, and the verdict has been rendered. You know, many people aren't happy with the way the verdict came out, but one of the things the family had requested is a trial, have this individual go through the entire process and let the judicial system run its course.
Thank you so much. Chief Cecil Smith out here with us tonight. You came to the courthouse to talk to the people, to address you guys at home, and it's a good thing we're still on the air, because it's those kinds of comments that people at home need to hear right now, especially tonight.
Now we want to get a feel for what it was like in the courtroom at the time the jury verdict was read, not guilty. Channel 9's Kathy Bellich has finally managed to work her way in front of a camera now, and she joins us live. Kathy, you were there in the courtroom. Give us a sense of what it was like.
Well, before we heard the verdict, it was very tense. You could just see the strain on everyone's faces in the courtroom. I looked around. I saw that the Martins were not there. Martin's mother and father were not in the courtroom. Their 3 lawyers were in the courtroom, and possibly some other relatives. So I noticed that first. Right in front of me, the Zimmerman family, his parents, his wife, and some other friends and relatives. They were just tense. They looked at each other. Their eyes were watery. They looked very, very nervous for George Zimmerman.
Once more, we'd like to replay the moment that the verdict was read tonight. It came down exactly at 9:59 tonight after 13 hours of deliberation. Here's the not guilty verdict for George Zimmerman.
In the Circuit Court of the 18th Judicial Circuit in and for Seminole County, Florida, State of Florida versus George Zimmerman. Verdict: we, the jury, find George Zimmerman not guilty.
And just before those words were said, you could feel the tension rise to a peak. Not only of us here in the studio, but everybody in the courtroom must have really felt the intensity. And then came the words, not guilty, ending this trial for George Zimmerman. And a 24-day journey, legal journey at least, but a 16-month journey since the actual event.
And the people you did not see had the biggest responsibility, and that was the jury, and you never see them. But we applaud their efforts as well. It's been an emotional, stressful 17 months, and we come to the conclusion tonight.
And as we've talked about before, this is certainly not the end of this for the Martin family. They will never forget their son. And it's not the end of it for George Zimmerman either. He will never forget what happened, despite the not guilty verdict tonight. Thank you for joining us. We take you back to regular programming right now.